When there was this opportunity to work with you, I was like, yes. And then I met you and
then you were like, oh, I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No. Please save me. I have these memories of just drowning inside films and never wanting to leave them. The first time that I met you, that you were seeking for a writer for a project, I already knew your work. I already felt you had some level of insanity that I loved and craved.
I am curious if you can recall what inspired you to want to be a filmmaker.
I just knew that whenever I would watch a film and I would leave the cinema, nobody was allowed to speak to me for 2 hours.
Okay.
Going to the movies and being on the bus with my mother and my mother being like, how did you like the film? And me being like, shh. I would just think about the film and try my best to stay stuck in that universe that felt for me way more exciting than being a human that had to go to school.
How does that amount to the steps you're going to take to arrive at your own path as a filmmaker?
I didn't even think it was a possibility. My parents are scientists. People would make fun of me when I said that I wanted to do that.
My parents are not artists either, and I remember the first time saying that, and it was met with ridicule because the thing that I wanted seemed so unreal that it was like comedy to people, right? When I look back and I think of who are the filmmakers that had inspired me as a kid or as a teenager, it's mostly lists of men. It wasn't until much later where I started to see films made by women and see films made by people of color. I can't help but wonder if I had been younger and had those references, would I have arrived at it much sooner?
Everyone would ask me what my reference was, and it was very hard for me to have one because everything that I was craving to do, I couldn't find it nearby.
Is there a moment of validation that made you feel like you were in the right place?
When I was studying films in the public university I went to, I realized that doing every little exercise for me was different than from everybody else because I couldn't stop craving for it to be perfect. I've struggled with the concept of perfection all my life, and I just recently realized that it doesn't exist and it only brings me closer to panic, and that perfect is actually going along with your guts.
Perfect to you in the moment.
Yeah.
One of the moments I can pinpoint for myself as validation came when I made my first short film. I got into a festival, and a series of other small validations that came after it were this kind of signifier that maybe, just maybe, I was in a place that I might belong.
First time that I was in a prestigious, very prestigious festival that I won a big prize. And it was such a high moment for me. And I remember everyone congratulating me and me feeling this thing that I didn't want to end. And the next year that I went to that same festival, nobody was paying attention to me.
You weren't hot anymore.
I wasn't hot.
You used to be hot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I remember not getting tickets to things. And I remember just feeling like
the burn.
Our inner voices can be devastating. There's no permanent feeling of yourself in relationship with whatever is going on. These things are situations you're in and they don't define you.
Filmmaking can be an incredibly challenging endeavor. A lot of highs, a lot of lows. One of the things that I found to be most helpful to me has been the guidance I've received, the mentors that I've had in my corner. Can you cite a version of that you've had for yourself?
With the Rolex mentoring program, I've been mentored by Lin-Manuel Miranda. I'm an overthinker, and he reminded me to feel the things that I was doing and to always try to connect with the simplest form of that truth. That is the fuel that should drive us. I think that is very important for a career. It's so important to learn from the experiences of other people that have been in the business, that have been struggling with the same things you are struggling now. And in that way, it's always beautiful to go along these people that know what you're going through and can guide you throughout the obstacles. Do you feel that you've had someone like that in your life?
Absolutely. The person that comes to mind for me is Christine Vachon, an incredible producer. She read my first feature. She was down to be on the road with me to get it made. And I think one of the greatest gifts I got from my time with Christine is that the no's were as important as the yeses.
I love the no's in collaboration because it's feeding a fire and you are together throwing little pieces of wood into the fire and it's growing and you're both getting excited. And it feels like whatever you are both saying, it's feeding something bigger. Those no's are the ones that I like.
When you look back at the work you've made, is there something that kind of boils to the surface for you that feels like part of your signature?
I like the mistake, I like the error, I like humanity being clumsy, and I really like having strong questions inside the films. For example, my short film Monster God is a question about what is God and what if that God was a monster? Why are we listening to it? I really like when films ask those questions. What do you feel the style that you're bringing into your films would be?
I'd say most of my work is under the umbrella of stress comedy. But stress is always there. Stress is the loudest note. Like, stress isn't gonna leave me yet. I'd say one of my bigger hurdles was comfortability around saying, I don't know. I am interested in creating an environment where people can comfortably say they don't know.
The most interesting leaders I've ever worked with were people that acknowledged when they didn't know something. I do feel that sometimes people confuse being open to notes with not knowing what you want. I want to work towards something in a middle ground, and I think that merging them sometimes is a good aid, sometimes not.
You're looking for the best idea.
Yeah.
You had mentioned that your queerness was kind of like to your benefit.
I always had this very specific clarity that my womanhood was something that was an obstacle for my career, because in my brain it was being a director was being a man, and somehow being queer for me meant that I was closer to that. I felt like my queerness was enabling me to have a situation of power that's traditionally for men.
It's been a more recent gift of having female filmmakers or female collaborators who are in my orbit. For me, directing was very much collaboration. It was very much community. Do I want to hear a voice in 3 years? Do I want to stand next to this person? And also, do I like their work? Of course, the loudest is, do I like the work? Does this make sense to me? Like, can we make together? And I'd seen your work and I really fell for it. And I thought the opportunity to bring our tones together felt really exciting to me.
The project we're working on, it's an insane real story that happened during the pandemic about an orchestra that got stranded in a castle in Germany. The parties, the insanity, the rivalry, the quest for who am I and why is the world crumbling. When I realized that we had like a great chemistry talking and we were having fun with things, like I think that every time that we speak, we have our moments of like saying things that are absurd and just laughing a little bit about that. And I felt like that was a great sign, because it just meant that there was a playfulness about our way of using language. And I feel that being playful in real life can lead to each other allowing to be playful in the story. And that is very exciting to me.